I want to show you how to do a butt joint all by itself, because that's one of the hardest things to do while mudding and taping. Now, I purposely made this butt joint kind of messed up the way it is, just to show you, because sometimes when you're doing a reno, that's how it ends up being, right? It's not perfect like a brand new drywall job. So to start off, I'll just probably cut off the paper that's flared out. So I'll just cut some of that off. Yeah, so I'll cut off some of this loose paper. Just do that, remove any loose parts. So we'll do that. Then what I'll do is have my mud ready. It's fairly runny, it's ready to roll. I have my 4-inch putty knife and my tape and reel. But what I like to do is just dent in the edges so that they're not flared out at all. So just take the butt end of this putty knife, just dent that right in. As long as your screws are all sunk and there's enough of them, just like so, then we can go ahead and just tape it. And I just like to put the mud on my putty knife, go sideways. If I go up and down like this, it'll bubble off the left and right side and onto the floor. So if you just go sideways with your putty knife, just get a nice coat on there. And you want to fill that gap up. Okay, so we got that filled up. Now, to make it easier for you, you can always pre-fill that. So just fill it with just straight mud, wipe it straight flat off, let that dry. Then you can do your taping. It's a lot easier to tape if you have the time. If you don't do it this way, it's a little harder, but it saves you a step. Now, the rule that I use is when I'm putting mud on before my tape, I don't want to see through the mud. Like right here, the tape would not bond to the drywall. There'd be air pockets in behind, and you'll see that forever. So you don't want any blisters or air pockets. So I'll just do this. Get it evenly on. And there's just a couple little spots I'll just go over. You want enough mud in behind there so that it bonds to the drywall. There's no air pockets, but you also don't want it built out too much, because the more it's built out, the harder it is to fan it so you don't see that butt joint. Now I'll just cut my tape to length. I'll go into the bevel that's below here. Then I'll just basically, well, this tape always bends one way because it's made for inside angles. So just make sure that you always install it so that the back side or the bent part is into the joint. If you do it the other way, there's always this little seam that sticks out a little bit and it's hard to cover that. So just put it on this way, find center, attach it down here. You can move it up and down. With your mud being fairly fluid, then it can squish out properly. If it's too stiff, it's hard to get flat. You'll get waves in it. So just keep it fluid like you see in the video here. And what I'm going to do is I'll just basically try to hold it, prevent it from moving. I'm not going to push very hard. Just going to kind of get it on there, get it straight. Okay. Now, since that was gapped and I never pre-filled it, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just run my finger, dent it in just slightly. That way I know it's not going to bubble out, because like I said before, it's hard to get that to hide, and then you'd have to flare it out a mile. So with that, I dented that in a little bit. Now I'll just push a little bit harder. Work out any excess mud. If you push too hard, you'll squish all the mud out and it won't stick to the drywall. Okay, so the tape coat is now done. So this will dry. Pull that tape in. It's nice and flat, but I didn't push too hard. And now, after that's cured up, then I'll show you how to do the first and second coats. Okay, so now that our tape is dry and the mud is dry as well, we can just kind of tap it and just see if there's any air pockets, and it feels really tight. There's no big bubbles outward, so that's good. So now we can just do our first coat on this butt joint. And I'm just going to go and scratch off any high spots with my putty knife. Just simply like that. I try to prevent from sanding too much, and now I can coat it. Now, the theory with coating on a butt joint is they are one of the harder things to do while mudding. I like to use a 12-inch trowel because they're rigid and straight, and it keeps everything, all my mud straight. It doesn't bow and flex like a 12-inch knife would. So these are more rigid and better for keeping everything flat. So the theory behind a butt joint is if I put my trowel on here, it's going to teeter-totter on the tape because the tape's obviously sticking out more. What I want to do is I want to basically put my trowel, apply my mud right down the middle, and just keep that flat. So just kind of happy medium it so that I'm not one way or the other. Do one strip there, then I'll do another strip on the left and the right, and then I'll taper it from where this ends over to here somewhere. Now, if I was just to go left and right from here, this is always like a sharp V, and it's really hard to hide that point. By going flat and then tapering it back, it blends it a lot better, and you'll never see that sharp point of the butt joint. So I've learned that the hard way, just because over the years, just trying to do going on the left and right side, it just takes so many coats to try to hide it. So use this method, it works really well. I'll show you how to apply it. Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. So it's going to take quite a bit of mud, and I'll just keep loading the mud, getting it up the center. Now what I want to do is I want to hide this tape on my first coat. My first coat basically will give me, it'll do the majority of the fill, and I want to get the shape that I want. The second coat will give me, it'll fill a little bit more as well, add to the shape and keep it flat, and then I'll probably do two more, a third and a fourth, just skimming it out. But if I don't hide this tape totally, then my second coat has to be fairly heavy again, because I want to hide this so that when I'm sanding, I don't sand through the mud and hit the tape, because you'll see that through your paint job. So let's just go and do this. So just get your mud on your trowel. Like I said, just go up the middle like that. You'll see left and right side is fairly heavy already. That's fine, that's normal. And you can see the tape here, but you can't see the tape here. Now this is just rough, but just to show you what it looks like. And I'll just keep going over it. Try to get the mud as the full width of your trowel, and just keep pushing on it. Get it applied for now. You can always err on the side of caution. It's always easier to add more coats than it is to have it too thick and try to sand it off. So keep that in mind. Now, sometimes at this point, if you're too afraid to try to go left and right side all at the same time, because it does take some technique, you can just trowel this out the way you want it, let it dry. I'll even show you. So I can see the tape here, so I need a little bit more. So I'll just apply a little bit there. So this way is if you want to just leave the swipe down the middle, and do the left and right side later. So I'm just gonna take a little bit off where it's thick, and then I'll go over it once. And that's actually really good, because I can just barely see the tape, which is good because I know that I've covered it. I'm not too thick, but I'm not too shallow either. So it's almost a perfect amount. You want to be able to see it a little bit so you know that you're not caked up too much with mud. If you want, you can just leave it just like this. Let that dry. It'll probably take a day. Then just knock off the high spots, flare it out left and right side, and then that would be officially your first coat. Then you got it. You have it fairly flat in the middle, tapers out. You have the shape and it's filled. Most of your drying time's already taken care of. Then I'd, like I said, do 3 more coats on it. But I'm gonna just load up some more mud and I'll show you how to do it all at once. Okay, so I have more mud here. Now, probably what'll happen is when I apply it, I'll probably have to hit the middle again, just because I did take it down to where I wanted, just to show you this one way. But we'll just keep loading up the mud. Now this way, basically want to get the mud on, but I want to cut off and keep all my weight on the left side of the trowel, and pretty much no weight on the right side, so that I'm not digging out any of the mud that I've just applied. I got a little bit of a mess going on here. Okay, all the weight's on the left, get the mud on there. Take that off because it'll be too wide. So I'll just put a little bit more on my trowel at a time. Basically putting no weight on it, hardly. So that's good there. Now I can just move to the right side. Now, just keep in mind, this is only for a butt joint. I'm not touching the flat here, the horizontal one. It's not part of the video, but just so you know, I'm not even going to think about that. So you can see it is a mess right now, but I am just going to hit this middle. I'm going to take a little bit off the left, not much. Basically just to get some on my trowel so I can apply it to the middle. I'll take a little bit off the right now. You can hear the trowel on the right side putting all the weight on it. So now I want to try to get it all correct and flat. So I'll hit this middle. It's not going to take much weight. Okay, that's looking really good. I can see the tape just barely right there, so I know I'm not too thick. Now, I don't want to put, well, all the weight on the left. It'll just leave a ridge here, so I'm just going to try to do a nice even amount of weight, but just barely any pressure. Obviously a little more on the left side to cut it down to 0. You can, right here I have a little bit of a ridge, so I want to probably hit that again just to get it flat. I'll do this right side. You'll always get a little bit of a ridge here and here, and that's okay. So just, I'm going to hit this middle. And then I'll hit both sides again and we should be good. it as flat and as wide as possible down the middle. I'll end it there. Sometimes you have to know when to stop. You're always going to get a little ridge like that just from the transition from going down to 0. That's okay because you can just scratch those or just knock them off or sand those a little bit before your second coat. So that's it for now. That's basically doing it all at once. Saves you a whole set of drying time, right? 24 hours to dry stuff that's this thick, right? So if you did the middle, waited a day, then did your sides, you know, you're down 2 days. So this just speeds up the process, but I show you 2 options just so that you can do it either way you want, whatever you're comfortable with. So that's it for today. We'll let that cure and we'll show you the second coat, and then after that it's just skimming it. So now that the first coat is fully dry, we're ready to do the second coat. Now, I usually just take my putty knife and just scrape off any high points. I like to do that and prevent any sanding because 1, the sanding makes a mess, and 2, the little fine particles get stuck under the drywall, so you have to actually work your mud a bit harder just to kind of get rid of the dust and for the mud to stick. So if possible, when going from first to second coat, I just try to scratch it. So I'll just scratch. There's a wave right here, like a high point that I definitely have to get rid of. So I can do that. Feel free to sand it if you want. And then as I get closer to doing more like skim coats, then I will sand more and scrape less. So I'll just hit any other high points. There's a couple just ripple waves right here. So I might actually just give those a quick light sand. Because if it's already rippled, then the second coat will just follow those ripples. I don't want to do that. Okay. I'm just going to dust that off. Now I want to feel to make sure that this ridge is, you know, fairly flat. If it's not, then go ahead and sand it if you have to. Yeah, I'm just going to sand that. I just want it to be a little bit flatter, like I said. Okay, that's good. Okay, so it didn't take much, minimal sanding. Now I'll show you how to do once you get the hang of it, it's just like the first coat, just not as heavy, so you can kind of push a little bit harder. It's still going to fill a fair bit, and then your third and fourth coats will be mostly just skimming it out and filling any light and low spots. Basically the same procedure. Just kind of get it on there, get it fairly even, but heavy as well. Okay. I want to try to go a little bit wider than the previous coat. So that looks good. I'm just putting a little more weight on the right side there. just gonna add a little bit to the bottom here. Kind of like so. I think that's pretty decent. Now we'll just get it to where we want it. Cut the left side. Okay, so that's good. I'm gonna go just lightly again once more. Try to get it flattened out and evened out, and the mud just gets a lot smoother as well. And don't be, it's better to have less mud and just do more coats, so don't cake it on too much. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go really light, and I want to try to flatten out where it's humped up again. And that'll flatten out the wall. Okay. There's a few ripples, maybe come in and take a look. It's just some waves, but it's not going to be perfect. That's why you have 2 more coats. There's just a little ripple there, and it's low there a little bit. That's okay. You kind of get the gist of it. Let that dry. Maybe do a light sand if you have to. Make sure to feel it. Get rid of any high spots. Do the same thing a little bit wider. And then 3rd and 4th coats, you won't have to be so critical on middle, left, and right. You can probably do 3 or 4 swipes randomly, and it should be flat enough where it won't matter. It won't teeter-totter or anything. So do that, and a couple more coats, you'll be ready for sanding. So that's all I'm going to show you for now, and thanks for staying tuned.